Cool. Thanks everyone for joining us. Today I've got Craig Curelop. Did I pronounce your last name right?
No.
I always butcher the last name.
Yeah,
Craig,
it's all good. It's
yeah,
it's Curlop, so
Curlop,
it's like
Curlop.
Kerplop without the first P.
Gotcha. Sorry about that. I
It's
always
all good.
butcher people's name. So we got Craig Curelop over here joining us. I've met Craig a couple months back at San Francisco Summit. And apparently Craig has been written some books about house hacking. He's really kind of the expert in a house hacking realm. He is avid users on Bigger Pockets and a couple other podcasts and money blogs, etc. And he kind of talks about the house hack. And Craig's his personal story is about quitting his job in about 3 years' time from his high tech job to completely financially independent through house hacking. So he's really kind of got this accelerated game figured out. So very glad to have him on the call today with us. And it's again like our surviving COVID sessions. It's very Q&A, open dialogue over here. So we're probably going to start with Craig's, story over here, which is very inspiring, and some of the numbers that he usually share. Hi, Craig. How are you? I will let you take it away with the introductions and telling us a little bit about your story.
Awesome. Yeah. Thank you, Eliza. That was a warm introduction, so I appreciate that. So I started out in Silicon Valley, which I think is where you are, right?
Actually, I'm in Seattle, but yeah, I
Seattle.
work in high tech too. So
Okay. So yeah,
sorry.
I was. I'm sorry about that. I was in what did I do? So I was working in the venture capital space. And so basically it was actually called venture debt though. So we would give loans to startup companies, and it was a very corporate finance type role, working 60, 70, 80 hours a week, getting paid, a pretty good salary. I was making over six figures just out of college. And so, things were, from most people's standpoint, things would say I was pretty good. But I found out pretty quickly that I wasn't very happy. Even though I was making $120,000 a year, like I wasn't happy. And so I was kind of thinking like, okay, like how the heck do I do this? Like, what do I like to do? And I thought like, okay, I like to travel. I like to spend time with my friends and family. I like to hang out. And like, how do I do this stuff full time? Sorry, my headphones are freaking out with me. But yeah, I like to do this. I like to do this full time. How do I do the stuff that I want to do full time? And so I read Tim Ferriss's book, The 4 Hour Work Week, and I discovered the whole passive income, right? Having a recurring stream of passive income. And so I was, being in Silicon Valley, I was thinking of dumb startup idea after dumb startup idea after dumb startup idea, and man, just like nothing was sticking. And so I then discovered real estate. I was talking to a friend. His dad, bought a property at age 25, and then, he was 55 at the time, and now he has it all paid off, and it's just a huge cash cow. And I was like, wow, that makes like a whole lot of sense. And so I started like, diving into Bigger Pockets, educating myself, all of that. And within 6 months, I had quit my job in California, moved to Denver, started working at Bigger Pockets, and then started really my real estate investing journey. And so that first house hack is when I first moved to Denver. It was a duplex, top bottom. I was living in the bottom, renting out the top. And what I was doing was I was also Airbnb-ing out my bedroom. And so I was living like behind on the couch, basically in the living room behind a curtain in a room divider. And so that allowed me, right? People think that's nuts, right? But I just knew that it was just for 1 year. And my why was so strong because I hated my last job so much. And so that first year, I was saving $2,000 a month, which was enough for me to then go ahead and, buy the second one in year two. And then, now you're saving $2,000 to $3,000 a month. And then you go ahead and buy the third one in year three. And, the way this works is that if you keep doing it every year, once a year, every year for 4 or 5 years, you're likely to have $3,000 to $5,000 of passive income coming in, which is which is enough for a lot of people to at least feel comfortable quitting their jobs to then go pursue, maybe you don't want to live off $5,000 a month for the rest of your life if you don't want to be super frugal, but many people can and do that. The other option is, hey, instead of working, 50 hours a week to make that 60 grand a year, now you're already making 60 grand a year from your passive income. So now you can put all your focus on something that you're truly passionate about, and that will likely maybe be a shorter payout in the next year, but an exponentially larger payout in, years 5, 6, 7. Right. So a classic example of that, if you're in the tech industry is, maybe you're financially independent, and maybe you negotiate with your, maybe you're an engineer and you want to be at a tech startup. And so rather than taking $120,000 or $150,000 salary as an engineer, why not say, hey, I will take a zero salary, but I want a higher equity stake, right? So maybe instead of like a 1% equity stake, you get a 2 or 3% equity stake. And so then when you go ahead and sell the business after you've done such a great job, right, your payout is going to be in the millions of dollars instead of maybe in the hundreds of thousands of dollars, or whatever it is, because businesses will always grow. The value of a business will grow much more than your weekly salary. So, that's just one idea for the tech industry. Obviously, there's many other ways to go about doing that.
Awesome. Well, I kind of heard some snippets over there, so would love to kind of dive into the numbers and dive into your stories a little bit more, Craig, over there. So you mentioned about house hacking. You mentioned about you were renting out every single room for your roommates, and then actually on the basement part, because I remember this story well. I actually met him, during the San Francisco summit, where he actually had a presentation on this as well. So, like you were renting out for Airbnbs and etc. So you were saying that for your first house, you're actually pulling $2,000 extra income. Is that correct?
Not extra income. So I was saving about $1,000 a month before that, just from my job.
Yeah.
But because I eliminated my housing expense when I house hacked, I was cash flowing about $400 a month.
Okay.
And my rent before that was about $600. So between the $600 I was saving from my previous situation to the $400 I was cash flowing, that was the
That's
additional $1,000.
I see the delta of so essentially that you used that. Now, guys, it may sound like a very little, like a 1,000 to start with, but then you're also saving on all the other costs and etc. So like that $1,000 difference, it's about $12,000 difference, right? So like you can kind of accumulate that. And Craig, what were you doing to kind of purchase the property? Did you kind of accumulate the equity, and that's how you kind of got into to have the initial money to put down for house hacking? Do you have, I understand now you're a real estate agent that helps people house hack. So based on your situation that you've seen, other people's situation you've seen, what are best suggestions to kind of start doing house hacking? What's your down payment? How do you actually accumulate that down payment?
Most people are just saving, right? You just have to pinch your pennies for a couple of years. That's the slowest part. It's just like, you pinch your pennies, be super frugal, live in a really cheap apartment, live close to work so you can walk. Don't go out, limit your travel, just like really buckle down for a couple of years. And so you can really just like really, really shrink the amount you spend. And then you also, in your free time, rather than, sitting around and watching Netflix or whatever, right? Like maybe you're doing something productive, whether it's like, instead of like, I would drive for Uber my first year. I'd make about $800 to $1,000 extra a month doing that. I would, I guess that's all I did for a side hustle, because I just had a pretty eco-friendly car. But other ideas are, if you have skills like bookkeeping or graphic design or something like that, like go up on Upwork and be like do some freelance work. There's Rover. You can literally pet sit and watch dogs and get paid for that. So there's just so many different things that you could do. I would recommend just finding the side hustle and just really try to, increase how much you make and decrease the amount you spend, so you can get to that, in Denver, it's 20, 30 grand you need for your first investment. So, get to that number, and then, and then that's when the saving really starts, when you get your first one. And then it just exponentially grows from there after your second, third, etc.
So it's only 20 and 30K to kind of start up in Denver. And then what kind of like financing option have you kind of seen? Because you're obviously in Denver, you kind of moved from Silicon Valley to Denver. Yeah. Like mostly saving costs, I'm assuming.
It was for the job of bigger pockets. I mean,
oh, okay.
I didn't really intend to move to Denver, honestly. Just kind of, I was going to actually move to Florida. That was my plan.
Yeah.
But getting a child bigger pockets obviously was a no-brainer. So
Gotcha, gotcha. So maybe just kind of like, and then 20 and 30K is all you needed to kind of start, which actually is cheaper than, because I do apartment syndications, which is actually cheaper than passive investing, even to a syndication deals and whatnot, because usually we look at 50K minimals and whatnot.
yeah.
So
Oh yeah,
that's
definitely.
actually very affordable. And your ROI, and what is your ROI on your first property? Because you shared some ROI numbers too. I was finding that like nowhere else are you actually getting that effective ROI, return on investments for that. What was your kind of like average ROI or a few examples on the ROIs on house hacking?
Yeah. So house hacking, you have almost like extraordinarily inflated ROIs because of such the small amount you put down, right?
Right,
For that first, and there's also the cash on cash ROI, which basically just calculates the annualized cash flow
right.
divided by your investment. And there's like what I call in my book, it's called the net worth return on investment, which is
Mhm.
okay, how much has your net worth increased relative to the down payment you needed?
Yeah.
And so for my first one, I got really lucky. I bought that duplex. It was completely redone. It was in a really up and coming area, but it was a little bit of a risk. But that property has appreciated absolutely like insanely, and so it's appreciated almost 200 grand in 3 years. And so after in calculating the ROI on that one, and I only put 17,000 into it.
Mhm.
And so my first year, I was cash flowing about 1,000 a month, so that's 12,000. I paid off 8,000 of my loan, which is about 20,000, and then I had another 66,000 in equity after that first year appreciation. So you're looking at $90,000 my net worth increased
Mhm.
just by putting that 17% down. So you're looking at a net worth return on investment of over 500%, right?
Right.
And so you really can't get that with any other strategy other than maybe like, you know, putting your money into a startup or angel investing, but you know how risky that is, right?
Right.
Like these house hacking returns are actually like they sound crazy and they sound too good to be true, but they literally can just like keep happening year over year over year. I mean, I did get lucky. You're not going to get 500 every time, but
Mhm.
you can pretty consistently get over 100% net worth return on investment each time.
Right, right. Yeah, because I just calculated ROI as you're speaking over here. Your cash flow is almost 188%, return on the first year, based on 17 grand down. And then like you said, with the equity, et cetera, you're basically getting 540 percent return on that first year in terms of investment, which is ridiculous amount of money, like where you're 5 times your income over there. Now it is not going to sugarcoat it. It's not really exactly passive investment, right? Like, so what kind of activities do you do to kind of, because you're kind of doing house hacking on supercharge. You're like renting out every single room. For some of our listener over here, they may be kind of dialed down a little bit. I love the graph that you shared in the presentation before, where there's a comfortability versus a affordability, or return on an investment. The more comfortable you are, your return will be lower. And the less comfortable you are, your return will be higher. So that really stuck with me in terms of that graphic that you have presented. For someone that kind of, a regular couple that shows up and they're doing this maybe not in a supercharged way as what you are doing, what are some of the criterias and tricks, or certain layouts and etc you would recommend them to look for their first house hacking?
Yeah. So really, it all depends on your comfortability versus your profitability, right? Like you just mentioned. If you want to be as profitable as you can, right? I mean, technically, the best strategy would be, hey, you and your spouse live in a camper or a van in the driveway of the property, and you rent out all of the house itself, right?
Right.
That's the best way to cash flow. A lot of people don't want to do that. So then the next step up that spectrum is going to be, okay, what about a room in the house? Can you and your spouse, or just you, depending if you're single, just have one room in the house and rent out the other rooms?
Mhm.
Okay, you don't want to share any living space either. And as I talk here, we're getting less and less profitable and more comfortable, right? So the next
Mhm.
step is, okay, well, how about the basement, right? Maybe you've got a separate basement or some sort of separate additional dwelling unit, and you can rent that out either long term or on Airbnb, and that will help cover your mortgage a little bit.
Mhm.
And so you kind of just keep going down towards that spectrum to until I always suggest that you bump up the level of profitability, like try to get as profitable as possible, and really, really kind of flirt with the edge of that comfort zone and try to just keep pushing out a little further. Because again, right, like, hey, I lived behind a curtain on a couch for a year.
Yeah.
And I did meet a lot of people. Some people I'm still friends with to this day, like just from Airbnb.
Yeah.
And I also, my net worth has increased probably $250,000 over the course of 3 years because of that. Like,
Right.
would you take a $250,000 bump to your net worth to sleep on a curtain by a year to get you started? You know,
Yeah.
I again,
Yeah.
right? So it just,
That's
yeah,
very
you
true.
have to put yourself in a position to get lucky.
Hmm. And then so, because my understanding, Craig, now is you're also helping other people finding these properties, right? To kind of figure out like what's the best house hacking norm for them, essentially. But do you kind of have a criteria when you're selecting these for your clients or yourself? What would you kind of suggest people do on their first endeavor? Is there a certain house criteria, like it has to be 5 room, or the bigger the house, the better? I always say like maybe a split unit, like a split level unit, have separate entrance, maybe a good thing for someone who's kind of more concerned about comfortability. Do you have some of these criteria to kind of share with our viewers?
Yes. So the best thing is really a 5 bed, 5 or 6 bed, a 3 or more bath. In the Denver area, it's a 5+ bed, 3+ bath. That's 400,000 or less. But the thing is like you'll find houses at 350 that need a lot of work, and you'll find houses at 500, 550 that will need a lot of work as well. That will need much less work.
Mm-hmm.
And so it all depends on what you want, right? Like, I mean, a
Mm-hmm.
$500,000 house here, a 5 bedroom, 3 bath will work, and it will cash flow you right around $1,000 a month. And that's probably because it's really nice, it's in a good location, and you can charge a little bit more for rent. Obviously, pluses for your first one, I say just get in and get going. Don't try to find the perfect house, because getting that $1,000 a month each month will start to change the game for you. And then that timer until you get your number two doesn't start until you close on the first one.
Mm-hmm.
So, you need to get number two quickly too. So really it just matters about getting in rather than finding the perfect deal, because sometimes it can take 3 to 6 months to find the perfect deal. Now, what I really like to look for as well is, like you mentioned, right, have a separate entrance to the basement, or have like the door right near the steps so you can just wall off or door off kind of the step area to the
Mm-hmm.
downstairs, and you maybe add a kitchen or something so you can have a basement unit as well as a top unit. And that way you have the flexibility to either rent by the room, you have the flexibility to Airbnb, you have the flexibility to just rent it out as 2 separate units. You kind of have a lot of flexibility here. So that's what I would say.
Gotcha, gotcha. Cool. Now I know there's many different flavors of house hacking, and based on you being the agent for them, I'm sure you already seen some of these. But let's say for some of our listeners that they're a little bit well off, right? And comfortability wise, they want to be a little bit more comfortable because a lot of our listener over here either have a family or they're kind of in their mid 30s, where they have a couple or whatnot, or thinking about having babies, whatnot. So the split unit, split level, it sounds like it's a really good option. But what about like, have you found, because you mentioned the first property that you got in was a duplex. So it's duplex to like I always advocate people to have fourplex, because fourplex is actually number wise works a little bit better than duplex, at least in my neck of the woods. Or do a FH loan on a fourplex and etc. Have you seen these type of house hacking actually kind of works out as well, where you kind of sacrifice less of that comfortability, but your other 3 units are kind of kicking out cash, so you're living for free? Maybe if your one master house is a little bit bigger, you pick that one, and maybe you can kind of rent out half of that unit as well. In comparison with like a single family house hacking, like based on your experience, what you've seen kind of being a little bit more profitable, for fourplex versus like single families and
Yeah.
etc.
Yeah, I mean, that's definitely a way to do it. It's definitely more on the comfortable route. Duplex, triplex, or quad. At least in the Denver area, again, each area is different.
Mm,
You're not going to cash flow all that much.
yeah.
Your cash flow in a single family home, if you house hack it the way I told you, will
Mm,
be probably around $1,000 a month. That's probably about the average.
mm-hmm.
You want to get a 4 unit, you're looking at a couple hundred, $200-$300 a month maybe.
Mhm.
And so, and typically typically the multifamily properties aren't as nice looking. It's not really as desirable of a place to live in, right? Very
Gotcha.
rarely do you see like a beautiful quad that has
Yeah.
all of the amenities you want.
Mhm.
The single families tend to be a little bit more desirable places to live. They're much easier to sell. I'm not against quads, right? I think at first it'd be wise to get a single family investment because you can pay for a single family property, but you know, you're collecting rent as if it was a duplex, a triplex, or a quad. And so that's kind of, by taking that hybrid approach,
Mhm.
you can just cash flow so much and you can still get the appreciation and all that kind of stuff as well. But
Gotcha.
yeah, as you're on properties, number 3, number 4, number 5 of your house hacks, and you've got this passive income coming in, that's when it makes sense to maybe say, okay, like I don't care about an extra $1,000 a month. I'd rather just have 300 and just make it easy
Mhm.
because it is harder to do the single family approach. So
Yeah, gotcha. And then actually a couple other things to kind of note on that. It's very interesting. I always see the world as round. It's all connected. One thing is also because your house hacking method is kind of like you're living in there. This is your primary. So you could leverage like FHAs or the ones that has a higher leverage loans, right? Because it's your primary. But maybe perhaps thinking about a couple years later, like specifically 2 years later or so, potentially moving out. I think Craig, you did that for your second property, right? Like you moved out your first one and you move out to the second one, but you kept the first one. And then
that's right.
maybe that turned into a regular rental. And now you can potentially do a 1031 exchange after a year or two owning that into a bigger property. That's maybe when you're moving kind of into a quads, essentially kind of doubling because you're releasing that equity on the property, either do a cash out refi or so, and kind of doubling that into the next property or using 1031 exchange and whatnot.
Yep,
Um,
exactly right.
yeah. So Craig, like specifically with COVID-19, I'm guessing Denver is kind of like a Seattle. We have a pretty strict lockdown mode over here. With our state, I think Denver's probably also have a pretty restricted lockdown policies over there. So what are some of the stuff that you're doing to kind of manage? So first of all, are you still house hacking? You're on your third property right now, right? Do you have roommates right now?
Yep, yep. I'm sitting in the house hack right now. Um,
Yeah.
I've got two roommates upstairs, and I rent out the downstairs full time.
Awesome. So what kind of has anything changed? Is there a pros or cons during this lockdown period?
So what the lockdown has made me do, so Denver is starting to open up right now. Like
Mm,
restaurants are, I think, at 50% now, and things are starting to open back up. But during this time, I did I did turn all of my I had 2 Airbnb units. So I used to Airbnb my basement, and I also used to Airbnb the bottom of my duplex.
mm,
But I recently turned both of those into full-time rentals.
that,
Um, so I turned those into full-time rentals, and then I also got a property manager to start managing all of my properties, including the one that I live in,
nice.
because I'm okay with sacrificing a little bit of you have to start kind of giving yourself a dollar per hour cost, right? And it's
Hmm.
like I was spending a lot of my time managing the properties and handling maintenance requests and doing that stuff, which I
Yeah.
absolutely hate doing.
Yeah.
Um, and it was taking away from the stuff that I like to do, which I also make more money in, which is, being a real estate agent and helping people in the Denver area find house hacks and stuff like
Hmm.
that.
Hmm.
So, I made that decision. That was a pretty big change. But I think, the whole reason we do this is to become free, right? So if it
Hmm.
doesn't work with property management, you're just creating another job for yourself.
Right.
So you got to make sure that your house hacks and everything works with property management. And we will, and yeah, we'll see how it goes. Right now, she's been doing a pretty good job.
Hmm.
And so, you
And
know,
where do you find, when do you kind of find, where do you find the PMs that kind of manage these type of things? Is there a specialty PMs that you can kind of contact, or is it regular PM company?
it's a regular property management company. It's hard to find. I'm
Yeah.
not going to sugarcoat that. Finding a property manager that will do rent by the room is very difficult. And in fact, right now I have mine and I'm locked into a contract, but the one that I had, she left the brokerage. So she's
Hmm.
no longer there.
Hmm.
And so the brokerage has to hold up to their contract to manage my properties to the end of the year. But like as of right now, if I get another property, I don't have a rent by the room property
Gotcha.
manager. And
Yeah.
so I am actively looking for one. I actually have my virtual assistant helping
Mhm.
me trying to find one, because, I think that's really valuable to my clients, and it's going to be pretty valuable to me. But if we can't get there, that's why you always have to make sure your properties work in multiple ways. Like, if it doesn't work rent by the room,
Mhm.
can you rent it out as a full-time rental and not lose money,
Right.
right? Can you
Right.
break even? Can you
Yeah.
like just not be forced to sell? And that's a really big thing.
Yeah, that's great. Because like in anything, we always advocate for like a multiple exit strategies. And this is one of these. What have you done with the previous two properties? Are you still house hacking these ones, or have you kind of changed that into a regular rental?
Yeah, I mean they're regular rentals now. So after the year, you just turn them into regular rentals. I
What
rent out the. Yep.
Why did you do that into a? Because then the profitability is lower. Um,
Oh, so I'm sorry.
yeah.
I'm sorry. I think we may have miscommunication there. So I haven't. I just basically I don't live there anymore, obviously.
Mhm.
So I just basically like moved out of my room and someone else came into my room.
Oh, gotcha. So they're
Yeah,
still house hacking, but you're not hacking anymore because you don't live there.
because I
That's
don't
a
live there. Yeah,
yeah,
yeah, yeah.
terminology
So I've moved.
difference.
Yeah,
But they
yep.
still rent by
Uh,
room, essentially.
right. So the second one is still rent by the room.
Mhm.
The first one was just two single one bedroom, one bathroom units. So those are just rented out as they are.
Mhm.
And then this one, I'll probably rent it out by the room for another year, and then I'll probably get just a full time tenant in the upstairs and a full time tenant in the downstairs.
Gotcha. And then that's kind of trading off as you kind of move it up in the level, you're kind of trading off like less hassle managing versus more profitability. Yeah.
Exactly.
Gotcha, gotcha. Um, yeah, that's very interesting. And then for listener over here, because we have some people who are very into side hustles, that may be an area to kind of look into to become a manager of a house hacking specific. Whenever there's a niche, there's always a profitability. I would think about that too. Um, and in terms, and have you kind of seen the house hacking? Now we have some listener over here that may be on the more other extremes on the comfortability over here. So something to kind of think about it is potentially one other ways to kind of house hack we never thought about as house hacking because we typically associate house hacking as in like something that you have to do actively, you have to live over there and etc. But another way to kind of do it is also if you have a property that you can rent out for more, let's say if it's more in the city centers or whatnot, you can potentially use that, rent it out, and then actually go rent another place that is desirable or maybe less of a cost, whatever the ROI there is, and still have a pretty comfortable lifestyle. But essentially, you're changing locations, or potentially on markets like Seattle, Silicon Valley, or Denver. I don't think Denver's kind of on the balance part. A lot of times your mortgage, like basically for the same amount of house that you pay on your mortgage, you use that for a rental, like paying a lease on, you actually will be living a little bit more comfortably. So that could be another way to kind of think about the house hacking as well, right, Craig? Have you kind of come across some of these cases among your clients?
Yeah, that's definitely a different way to think about it. One of my clients did move out of. He was uncomfortable with the whole COVID situation, all of that, living with five different people, all doing different things. So he actually did move out of his house hack into an apartment downtown, nice area, walking distance to grocery stores and a lot of basically everything.
Hmm.
And he rented out his room. And
Yeah,
so yeah, it basically like you're not supposed to do that because you're supposed to live there for a year, and your intent is supposed to live there for a year.
right.
So you kind of run into that whole situation. So it's definitely best to stay there for a year if you can.
Mm.
Um, I won't tell you whether to follow the rules or not.
Right. Yeah, we'll just remove this from the recording and whatnot. Um,
Yeah.
so other questions I have was the house hacking. So you've done kind of, and then do you have like enforce a house rule then for the whole pandemic situation, the lockdown situation, where you're kind of like giving people a rule about like, hey, or like, up the frequency of cleaning the house. Like, is there anything on maintenance or house rules that you've kind of made changes to?
No.
Okay.
Um, yeah, not to be honest, no. I think we're all the the rules and stuff the city has put in place is kind of what we're abiding by. We're not really doing anything extra.
Mm.
And, I mean, the people I live with are in their 20s and healthy.
Mhm.
So it's not like they're at risk. I think, I don't know, this gets into a whole different conversation, but it seems to me
Yeah.
that everybody who actually gets the coronavirus are the ones that are actually worried about it. And the ones that aren't worried about it are the ones
Mm.
that don't get it. So I'm just kind of like really not worrying too much about it.
Yeah.
Taking precautions where I can and following all the city rules and stuff that I can. But,
Mm.
I'm just not letting it take over my life. So.
Yeah, that makes sense. And have you found any issues with lease up when you're renting by room? Because I would imagine the perception of it is like, ooh, I don't know, I don't want to live with roommates and whatnot. Um, do you find any challenges on lease up over the units?
No, because they're not surprised, right? The listing clearly says it's a room for rent,
Mm-hmm.
and and it says how many roommates you have, and it describes who the roommates are, and all of these things. So it's really not a surprise. And in Denver, right, in some markets where you can you can rent a 2-bedroom house for $600. Sure, like that, it wouldn't work there.
Mm-hmm.
But in Denver, a 2-3 bedroom is going to cost you $1,800 to $2,000. So, or a 1-bedroom, 1-bath, depending on where you are, will cost you at least $1,200. Whereas one of my bedrooms will cost you $700.
Mm-hmm.
So, it just is it's a way to save a lot of money.
Yeah.
And we try to, I always make sure that we always screen the people and make sure that they're clean, quiet, and respectful. Those are the 3 main things. And I haven't had too many issues with, with this rent by the room situation.
Gotcha. And that's probably attribute to the criteria that you have set in place, specifically, right? And
Yeah. Yeah.
what kind of rental process do you go through to kind of vet your roommates? Because to some people, when they're first starting it, it can be very daunting. Is there certain house rules or like the method of criteria that kind of help you think it was really good to kind of put in to deter some of the potentially bad tenants?
So, we always do the showings and we always look at the house, and I can usually get a pretty good sense of what someone's like within the first 30 seconds of meeting them.
Mm.
And so if I don't like them, they don't get accepted. And this is for house hacking, right?
Right.
You can't,
Right.
if you're just doing a regular investment, you can't just not pick someone because you don't like them.
Yeah.
But oftentimes the people that I don't like often have bad credit scores or have a criminal background or something like that. And so the credit score or criminal background are going to be the two
Mm.
easiest ways to screen people out.
Mm.
I don't accept anyone under 600 credit score. I've never met anyone. I've talked to many real estate investors, and I've talked to many real estate investors who have had trouble with tenants. And
Mm.
I've never, ever once came across a real estate investor who had a troubled tenant that also had a high credit score.
Yeah, that's true. I can
So,
attest to that. Most of my tenants that went crappy is because we bend the rules somehow on credit scores.
yep,
Basically we bought into a sob story and they never work out.
yep. Sob
Unfortunately.
stories are super easy to fall for because, ideally we're all nice people, but just remember, you're not running a nonprofit, right?
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
You're running a for-profit business, and it's,
Yes.
so, yeah. Anyway, yeah. So
So,
credit score is the biggest thing, and then you just meet them. They fill out an application. We call references, make sure that they're good, past landlords, employers, all that kind of stuff. Make sure that it's all good to go.
mhm.
And if it is, then we move forward with the lease signing and security deposit and all that stuff.
Gotcha. And then is there any criteria you kind of set in for the social aspect other than you obviously meet your roommates essentially, and that kind of fits your personalities and whatnot? And do you guys kind of social at all within the roommates?
I always tell my roommates when someone's coming to check out the place and they're happy to meet them and stuff like that. Sometimes they don't meet them, sometimes they do. Really, when you're in college and stuff, you tend to all kind of be friends and you gather around in the living room and you drink beers and watch football, whatever it
Yeah.
is. But when you're kind of in the young professional realm, a lot, I've always had it where people are just kind of go to their rooms, hang out in their rooms. They come out and make some dinner and go back in their rooms. Like
Mm.
there's not really much like socialization. Like if you run into somebody,
Mm.
you talk to them and you be nice and it's friendly and
Yeah.
but in terms of like, we're not really all best friends by any means.
Gotcha, gotcha. That makes sense. Because that's kind of contrary to what some people are kind of thinking. So for some folks, so I guess we kind of covered the Corona stuff. And so for some folks who just kind of started with this, and have you seen kind of rent by room? Now go a step further. It's not exactly house hacking, but rent by room is kind of this concept over here. Do you have out of state investors who's kind of like doing this mostly for rent by room? Is there things that they kind of put in place that's different than a regular rental that is kind of worth noting on?
I do have a couple of rent by room investors, and I also have a couple out of state investors, but no rent by room out of state investors.
Okay.
So, but it wouldn't be much different than a regular investor that's here. It's the same exact process. You're just not here to look at it.
Mhm.
But yeah, the really the biggest thing that changes is that when you do rent by the room, you need to furnish the common areas.
Mhm.
So kitchen, living room, common, whatever, just everything, bathrooms, everything except the bedrooms,
Mhm.
you have to furnish. And so that's an extra, probably, depending on the size of the house, 5 to 10 grand to furnish everything. Um, But other than that, that's really all you have to do when buying the house that's different. Maybe put locks on each door, stuff like that. I actually don't even do that. I probably should. But,
Mhm.
making sure each room has a fire, smoke detector kind of thing. So you have to, you have some safety issues. But yeah, I think that answers your question.
Awesome. Cool. That's awesome. Um, and in terms of, and then why do you move out kind of like every year or so? Is there a reason that you kind of do that? Where you're kind of like
Uh,
moving out every year or so? Like,
yeah,
uh,
to do it again. Right.
okay.
I mean, that's where the
Because
power,
the landing part, because it has to be
yeah,
a
you have to,
primary. Yeah.
you have to be a primary for at least 1 year. So right after that 1 year mark, you go ahead and you do it again and again, and you just keep doing it, because that's where, right now, your $1,000 a month comes $2,000 a month, which comes $3,000 a month, and then year after year, you just kind of keep growing that. And
Mhm.
that's where a lot of the power of house hacking is. That is where the power of house hacking is.
Gotcha. Gotcha. Cool. Our audience has been extremely quiet over here. Usually they have gazillion questions, but
Either
today
I'm
it
doing a good
doesn't look.
job or they're not interested.
Yes, it looks like they're not having a lot of questions over here. Again, folks, if you have any questions for house hacking, please like put it in the Q&As over here, so we can actually address some of that. Now let's talk about your books a little bit, Craig. You have written a book on house hacking. And so is this kind of like a manual for, when did you kind of published it? I'm just kind of pulling up, doing the sharing screen over here. And what do we expect out of the book? What's kind of covered in here?
Yeah. So the house hacking strategy, that's a book that I published, that I wrote for Bigger Pockets. It's basically is just a step-by-step guide on how to get through your first house hack. It pretty much has everything I know about house hacking, distilled into 250 pages or whatever it is.
Yeah.
It talks a lot about the rent by the room. It talks about the different strategies, the profitability versus comfortability, why house hack, why it makes so much sense to do so,
Hmm.
all of these things. Um, and yeah, it's a one-stop shop for pretty much everything you need to know. I did write this before my third house hack,
Hmm.
so I don't have my third house hack deal. Doesn't really talk much about it in there, but there is an ebook on Bigger Pockets. If you get like the ultimate package of the house hacking strategy on Bigger Pockets,
Hmm.
it has like an extra edition and talks about my third deal. It talks about some craziness that went on with that third deal. It's got the calculators and all that kind of stuff as well. So,
Cool.
whatever you'd prefer, you can buy it either way. But yeah, I've gotten good reviews so far. And so hopefully y'all like
Yeah,
it.
that would be really good for someone who wants to kind of start doing house hacking, and because sometimes it's great to kind of follow a roadmap of what you do is over there and etc. Now, moving forward, what is in the future, like 5 or 10 years for you? In terms of this house hacking thing, you're kind of getting to a place where you are financially independent. I guess the next step is usually either kind of doing the glory, helping other people, getting their stuff ready to go. or, there's maybe a wealth goal. So what is kind of installed for like potentially future for you? Are you
Yeah.
ever
So I
gonna
don't.
stop doing house hacking, I guess?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I will. I definitely will stop at some point. 5 to 10 years is a bit too far out for me to predict. So I never really even think about 5 or 10 years from now. I think, by the end of this year, my goal is to be a bit more of a consultant type agent. And, I have a couple agents underneath me that I have also house hacked
Hmm.
and have them actually show the houses to clients and stuff. And if they have any questions or anything like that, I'll also, whether the agent or the client has a question, I'll be there to answer the question. So I'm less kind of like boots on the ground and more just high level,
Yeah.
because that allows me to kind of not be super stationary. Like I don't have to be in Denver for that.
Hmm.
I'm not sure if you know, but I've been doing a van build out. So, I want to
Nice.
eventually, kind of go travel a bit and enjoy life and, do the consulting stuff on the side, maybe write for the blog, something like that. But, I don't care about like achieving massive amounts of wealth.
Hmm.
I'd like to have $5 or $10 million in net worth, and from there, just be able to kick back and enjoy this great thing we call life, and
Yeah.
do the things that I've always wanted to do. So yeah, I don't see myself getting into syndication like you are. I don't see myself getting into mobile home. I will invest in syndications,
Yeah.
but I don't. But it's like I will give you my money, and I will only
It's a lot of
only
hard
talk
work.
to you. Yeah,
Yeah.
I'll only talk to you if you don't pay me at the right time.
Right.
But other than that, I don't want to be a bother. And so that's kind of, I do want everything to be truly passive for me, so I can enjoy
Yeah, it's
the
kind
things
of
like.
actively choosing the lifestyle that you want to kind of get into, and then kind of design all your other wealth vehicle towards that particular goal.
Right.
That's awesome. Well, thank you so much for sharing all these things with me. I'll follow up definitely with you on the van build out stuff, because I know a couple other podcasters or people who I know in life that really share that passion. So I'll definitely connect you with that as well.
Awesome.
But yeah, well, thank you so much to be on our podcast, or sorry, not podcast, and we're not available on podcasts yet, on our webinar today. And unfortunately, there's people who are just being very quiet. Maybe I'm asking all the questions that they wanted to ask already. And this session will be recorded for all the folks that always ask me these questions, and then put it on website for that. Thank you so much for joining our show today.
Awesome. Thanks for having me, Lisa. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.